inadequate and in no way reflects the type of action that needs to take place, right now. And so here we stand, 6 months away, or not even 4 months away from Cancun, the next international negotiations. And we're 3 months off of Cochabamba, an incredibly hopeful gathering where you and me, people like you and me that are concerned about our children, people like Dr. Hansen who are concerned about their grandchildren, in the future that our Mother Earth will provide to those that we're protecting her for. They met in Cochabamba, and they came up with the People's Declaration. And, it's with great honor that I say that, we sent a delegation from Turtle Island, what we call North America, to Cochabamba. And we participated in that gathering. And the thing that was so inspiring about Cochabamba is that, what came out of 33,000 people, in an open environment, no security, no paramilitary forces cracking heads, everybody just chilled, one pass gets you in every room, Yeah, it was the people's gathering on planet. And what came out of that was the categorical condemnation of what many of the most vulnerable, members of the five-fingered nation of us human beings, the most vulnerable of our relations in terms of climate change and the drivers of climate change. And I'm talking about communities that live close to developments like the tar sands in Alberta, or the coal extraction taking place in Crow and Cheyenne territory, in Wyoming and Montana, or families that get removed from the places that they've been since Creator put them there, places like Big Mountain or Uranium City up in Saskatchewan. These places, these kinds of people got together and they categorically condemned, what is contained within the words in that Copenhagen Accord. The false solutions that are being brought forward that are based solely in market mechanisms that don't provide the necessary protections grounded in human rights, designed with the precautionary principle in mind. They categorically condemn those false solutions, things like forest offsets, things like, bioengineering, biochar, all of these different false solutions that end up exacerbating the on-the-ground impacts that, indigenous peoples, local communities, workers, forest-dependent communities in the global south, and of course coastal-dependent peoples. These types of things that are being discussed by the lobbyists that Dr. Hansen described, submitting legislation in U.S. Congress and here in the halls of our own parliament. We need to be skeptical of these things. We need to ask questions about them. I'm not going to get into the science. We have the world's leading expert on that understanding here, or the failures of economic globalization. Again, we have an expert here. But one thing I did want to put out there in my opening remarks was basically, to talk a bit about what our own traditional scientists talk about. We've been talking about the fact that our Mother Earth cannot sustain, this psychotic industrial experiment that's been taking place for the last 150, 200 years. We've been talking about that for a long time. Green jobs. We've been talking about green jobs, hell, for 60,000 years. But so many of our indigenous people's prophecies, they talk about this time. Backstage, I was talking with Dr. Hansen, just getting introductions, and he brought up, one of our great knowledge keepers, Chief Oren Lyons from the Onondaga Nation, faith keeper. Since I was just a little kid, Oren Lyons has been talking about, one of the prophecies of his people. And they talked about a time when the trees would die from the top down, that there would be great unrest and great change that would come upon Mother Earth. And of course, as we see all of these positive feedback cycles, things like the spruce pine beetle, the permafrost melting, drunken tree syndrome in southeast Alaska, the trees are literally dying from the top down. And us Cree people, we have a prophecy of the seventh generation. And that prophecy, it talks about a time, when there would be a generation of young people born free of the colonial mind, the violence of colonization, And here we are today in Canada, where, 75% of our Aboriginal population is under the age of 30. By 2016, 1 out of every 4 people in the Canadian workforce would be a Native person, And to me, that represents, the manifestation of that prophecy, that pre-prophecy. Because what will end up happening, of course, is we're having this massive population of our young people coming to age, and they're more sophisticated, more educated, and more empowered, and 7 generations behind them. And so there's great change coming. In our sister nation, the Anishinaabe, they have a prophecy. It's called the prophecy of the 7th fire. And many within the Medellin Lodge have announced since last year that 7th fire has officially been lit. And in short, that prophecy talks about a time when the people would be presented with 2 paths, one of scorched earth and one of green earth. And the choice would be on the people to decide what path they would take.